You know what I mean?
Can we add number 4 to that?
Number 4 on which one?
Worksheet 1.
Just do number 4 instead of number 3 then. So we don't have to do a bunch of problems. So 4 and like 9 would be cool.
All right, so we need the unit circle for worksheet 1. So let's grab that. All right, so which one am I doing, 4 or 3?
4. Just do 4, yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Sure. So looking at the interval from 0 to pi, I'm going to figure out what quadrants we're talking about. Since theta is positive, I know I'm going counterclockwise. So we're dealing with quadrants 1 and 2. Consulting all silly turtles crawl, I know that tangent is negative in quadrant 2. So this is the theta that I'm looking for. So I know tangent is y over x. So I'm going to be going to my unit circle. I'm looking for the place in quadrant 2 where the y coordinate has a square root of 3 in it, and the x coordinate has a 1 in it. So that would be here. So 2 pi over 3 should be my answer. Cool, fellas? And again, you can always check these. If I do 2 pi over 3 in my or tangent of 2 pi over 3 in my calculator, the decimal should be the same as negative root 3. And if I check 2 pi over 3, the decimal should be in between 0 and 3.14. Joe?
I just have a general question.
Mm-hmm.
So like it's tangent, but it's negative, so we can't use the bottom part, which is tangent. If it is positive, can we?
So I just ignore the signs we've taken care of by figuring out the quadrant that we need to look for our answer in.
Okay.
So you can ignore the signs.
Okay.
They just don't matter for this.
Okay, makes sense.
Because we've already figured out the quadrant, so it doesn't matter. Where does the sign go with the numerator denominator? We don't care because we've already figured out the quadrant. So we just look for where. We are on worksheet 1 right now. Was there another one here? I thought you had 2 that you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, like number 9. Could you do that one, please?
Yeah, it's the same kind of problem, but okie dokie. So again, positive theta, so we're just going counterclockwise. Pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2. So we're looking at quadrants 2 and 3. All silly turtles crawl. I remember cotangent is the reciprocal of tangent. So cotangent's negative wherever tangent was negative.
Okay.
So referencing all silly turtles crawl, that's the second quadrant again. So cotangent is x over y. So I'm looking for the place where x over y equals -1. Or if you think about it, we could multiply both sides by y. And look for the place where the x and y coordinates are opposite. So if I go to quadrant 2 and look for that place, that's here. So it should be 3 pi over 4. Check.
I have a question. On the test, are you going to give us the x and y's for the tangent?
That's previous knowledge. I would hope that you have that part memorized.
Okay. We do 7.
Okay. So this is, I remember that sine is y and cosine is x. So I'm just going to go for the place on the unit circle where the x coordinate is 1/2 and the y coordinate is -√3 over 2. So that's right here. So 5 pi over 3. Done. How's that? Well, again, it's all, most of this is, most of mathematics is, can you find the easy way to think about it is kind of the trick. Ariane.
Can you do some on worksheet two?
Sure, which ones?
I don't know.
Okay. Good. Okay. So again, we'll start by figuring out the quadrant that we're in. So theta's positive, I can tell. So going counterclockwise, so 0, pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2. So we're looking here at quadrants 2 and 3 again. If I do all silly turtles crawl, the place where tangent is negative is in quadrant 2. So that's my theta. This is my alpha. And since the last axis that theta passed through on the way to alpha, or on the way to its terminal side, was vertical, and because theta is negative, I know I'm going to be doing pi minus alpha. Where alpha is tan inverse absolute value negative 3.1 or 3.25. It's just calculator time here. So I got to check my mode and make sure I'm in radian mode because the directions ask for radian answers. And just do pi minus tan inverse, and I'm going to do the absolute value just in my head there. Didn't change it to radians. I swear I did that. Try it again. There we go. So 187. Actually, I should probably write it here so it's less confusing. Now you're making some faces at me, Ariana. Where did I lose you at?
I kind of get how to do it, but yeah, I don't know.
Okay, so at some point you didn't know. We were doing this. Where did I lose you? Were you okay with the picture I drew?
Yeah.
Okay. Were you okay with theta equals pi minus alpha?
Oh, we have to have like the pi minus alpha. We have to have that like memorized.
So this part is coming from the picture. So I know that the part of the x-axis that makes up alpha, so like this is my alpha, so the end of the x-axis that we use to make up alpha is what we're either going to be adding or subtracting alpha to. Is that okay? That's where the pi is coming from. And then to decide whether I'm going to be adding or subtracting alpha, if I'm going counterclockwise, if the last axis I pass through is a vertical, I'll subtract alpha. If the last axis I pass through is horizontal, I'll be adding alpha. And if I'm going clockwise instead of counterclockwise, it's reversed. The rules are reversed. So vertical would mean you add and horizontal would mean you subtract. Is that?
Yeah, that's cool.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes, Aaron?
I'll say turtles crawl. So
Mhm.
when the tangent isn't negative, when it's like positive and normal, it's in the turtle quadrant, right?
Yes.
And so when it's negative, it moves to the silly quadrant.
So what the letters mean is the trig functions that are positive in that quadrant.
Yeah.
If they're not positive in that quadrant, then they would be negative. So the A is for all. So everything, sine, cosine, tangent, all positive in the first quadrant.
Yeah, I know what they say, but it's like
Okay.
all sine, tangent, cosine, right?
Good, yes. So any place where, other than all and tangent, tangent would be negative. So quadrants 2 and 4. And now in this problem, we don't care about quadrant 4 because our answer can't be there.
Oh, okay.
So it has to be quadrant 2.
Move to one of the other quadrants negative. Then,
Yeah.
if sine or cosine were negative, would they move to tangents? Or-
Right. Tangent, or in the case of sine, it'd be tangent or cosine.
Yeah.
If in the case of cosine, it'd be sine or tangent.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
Is that okay?
Uh-huh.
Leo.
Can you explain the rule of which pi I use, like pi minus alpha? Because it's like something with like the last axis that you pass or whatever.
Yeah. So it depends on whether theta is positive or negative, which you can tell right away from the range that's given, right?
Yeah.
Okay. If we're talking about positive thetas, where we're going counterclockwise, if the last axis we passed through was vertical, we subtract. If the last axis you pass through is horizontal, then you add. And if it's negative, it's reversed. So vertical would mean adding, and horizontal would mean subtracting.
Yeah, I'm more confused about which pi I choose instead of the alpha.
Oh, sure. So it's always going to be the end of the x-axis that makes up your alpha. So in this problem here,
Okay,
this is our alpha.
the alpha.
So we're going to use the end of the x-axis that has alpha, or that we use to make alpha.
Okay.
Is going to be whether we use pi or 2 pi or 3 pi or 7 pi or whatever.
Okay.
Is that?
Will you ever have to use like 3 pi over 2? Is it always
No.
an even number?
You'll never be using the verticals.
Okay.
It'll always be
Horizontal.
the horizontal, because it's always going to be the part of the x-axis that makes up alpha. So it's always an x-axis value. Does that feel okay?
Yeah, just knowing that means I only have 2 options.
Yes, that does narrow it down a quite a bit
Yeah,
for
and
you.
that seems to be automatic which pi to use.
Yeah. Joe, you had your hand up.
Yeah, no, you were on the thing. It was the
Okay, the rules.
Just the rules. So,
Okay. Okay. Anybody else before we do this thing?
Just one more clarification, real quick.
Yeah, what's up?
On the choosing your alpha. So when it's greater, when theta is greater than 0, and you're passing a vertical first, it's negative. But if you're passing,
You subtract alpha.
or, yeah, excuse me, you subtract alpha. But if it's a so like obviously horizontal is this way. So that means if it's going through a horizontal, then you add it.
Right.
And then
So
it
like,
goes to a vertical.
if this is the situation,
Yeah.
you'd
So
be
that's what
adding
it is.
alpha,
They'd be adding because it's the last thing you pass is the horizontal.
right?
And if it was to the second quadrant, it'd be negative because you're going through the vertical.
Right.
And then it's just reversed for greater thetas greater or less than 0.
Right.
Less than 0.
Yeah. So
Okay.
that one is the subtract.
Right.
And then if you were going this way, you'd be adding.
Yeah.
Or if you're going this way, you'd be subtracting.
And our theta is just equal to.
Or I'm sorry, the reverse.
Mhm.
It's
And
subtracting and then adding.
our theta is just like in this example, the tan -1 times.
Yeah, the thetas are your answers.
And then you just plug that into the calculator, plus or minus pi or whatever that value is in the.
Yep, just the equation that you've written.
And we're good?
Yep.
Okay, awesome, thank you.
Yep. All right, yeah.
Do you have a calculator I can use?
Yes, let me pass these out and I'll get you one. Cool.
Thank you.
All right, pencils and, yeah, what's up?
What are the odds we do a partner quiz?
Today, 0. In the future, non-zero. But today, 0. Pencils and calculators? You definitely need a calculator.
So much history on this.
Before you guys get started on this with your calculator, double check that you're in the proper mode. So press that mode button right next to the blue second button. Make sure you're in radian mode. If you're not in radian mode, you're gonna get all the answers potentially wrong, so make sure you've done that. I don't know how to change the mode on your calculator, that's a newfangled fancy thing. But if you didn't change it to degree, the standard would be radian, so.
It did not change.
If you haven't changed it, you shouldn't have to worry about it. Oh. Alright, let's see. Again, the first page, excuse me guys, the first page, you should be using the unit circle that's on the first page, so you don't have to do anything with your calculator per se on the first page. The second page, though, you should be using your calculator. Those of you that just got a calculator from me, make sure you double check to make sure the mode is in radian, not degree. Yeah.